The reception hall aboard Zenith Prime looked like someone had bottled the night sky and poured it into architecture. A transparent dome arched high overhead, its surface catching the station's engineered starlight and scattering it into soft constellations that didn't belong to any real world. Beneath it, diplomats drifted in slow orbits, dozens of species, dozens of agendas clinking crystalline glasses and trading compliments. That sounded suspiciously like negotiations. Jake Morrison stood near the refreshment station, feeling as out of place as a rifle at a wedding. His dress uniform fit perfectly, which somehow made it worse. On the battlefield, he knew where to put his hands, where to keep his eyes, how to read danger like weather. Here, every smile felt like a weapon he'd never been trained to wield. "Try to look approachable," Sophie Blake murmured beside him, her voice low enough to vanish into the hum of conversation. She wore her own formal attire with the easy confidence of someone who could talk down a riot. "I am approachable," Jake said. Sophie leaned closer, studying his face with mock seriousness. "That's your 'I am about to breach a door' expression, not your 'hello, honored delegate. Please consider our trade routes' expression." Jake tried to change his face. The result was, at best, a reluctant twitch. "Better," Sophie lied. Commander Lisa Grant had insisted that every human officer attend. "Visibility matters," she'd said. "We're new here. They have to see us as more than a footnote." Jake understood the logic. He just hated being the evidence. Across the room, Ambassador Paul Chen was in his element, moving through clusters of aliens like a veteran swimmer in deep water, smiling, listening, making people feel as if their words were the most important thing happening in the galaxy. Jake was reaching for a glass of something that smelled faintly of citrus and metal when the room's rhythm broke. First a hush, then a ripple. Then the crowd parted as though pushed aside by an invisible current. Someone was coming through. The figure was tall enough that even species with long limbs and towering frames turned to look. She strode with the certainty of gravity, every step a declaration. Scale skin shimmered between deep violet and oil black under the hall's lighting, and ornate armor sat across her shoulders and chest like ceremonial thunder, not merely decoration, but a statement of rank. Princess Voroshek of the Korean Empire. Up close, she was almost absurdly imposing, nearly 7 feet. Built like a predator carved from stone. Her eyes were bright yellow, slit-pupiled, and they swept the hall with the sort of disdain that didn't bother to hide itself. "So," she said, and her voice carried without effort. A translation device rendered her words into crisp English, but it couldn't sand down the contempt. "These are the famous humans." A few diplomats laughed nervously. Others went still, like animals hearing a distant growl. "I expected something more," Voroshek continued, letting the word drip. Ambassador Chen stepped forward with practiced calm. "Princess Voroshek, welcome. We're honored you could join us." She didn't acknowledge him. Her gaze slipped past Chen as if he were part of the furniture, and fixed instead on the human officers in their uniforms. "I've heard stories," she said, "how your kind survived in isolation so long, how you believe yourselves fit to stand among the coalition." Her lips curled. "But I see thin frames, soft bodies, breakable bones. How did such fragile creatures survive even on your own world? Commander Grant approached, smile carefully controlled. Your Highness, humanity has faced many challenges. We've proven our resilience repeatedly. Resilience. The princess laughed, harsh and bright. I've reviewed your physiology. Your skin tears. Your bones fracture. You require constant rest and sustenance. She plucked a crystal glass from a passing tray and crushed it one-handed. The shards tinkled onto the floor like ice. This, she said, opening her palm as if displaying evidence, is what happens to a human in real combat. Jake saw Sophie's shoulders tighten. Across the hall, a few aliens leaned in, interested. A few looked sympathetic. Some looked pleased. A tactical officer Jake recognized, Danny Wright, muttered from behind the human cluster. Someone should shut her up. No one here can, Sophie whispered back. Not her. She's undefeated. 47 wins. Warriors bred, trained, armored. She broke them all. Voroshek turned slowly, addressing the room like it was her audience by right. The coalition grows weak when it accepts inferior species. In the Korean Empire, worth is measured by power, by dominance, by victory. She looked at the humans again, and her smile sharpened. Your kind wouldn't last a single day in Korean military training. Ambassador Chen tried one more time, voice gentle. Princess, perhaps we can continue this discussion privately. There's no need. Private. Her eyes gleamed. You want privacy because you're ashamed. Admit it. Admit you are lesser. Then her gaze found Jake. You, she said, pointing as if selecting prey. Quiet one. You stand like a warrior. Her head tilted. Yet you say nothing while I insult your species. It felt as if the entire dome rotated toward him. Jake met her stare, letting his expression settle into something blank and steady. I'm listening, Your Highness. Listening. She stepped closer. No anger, no defense. Perhaps humans don't understand honor. We understand it, Jake said. We just don't always announce it. Her nostrils flared. Then prove it through action. She leaned in until Jake had to angle his head upward to keep eye contact. I challenge you, human, tomorrow. Single combat in the grand arena. A murmur surged through the room. Excitement. Disbelief. The faint static buzz of bets already forming. Voroshek's teeth showed in a smile. Unless your kind are cowards, as well as weak. Commander Grant moved to Jake's side, voice tight. Private Morrison, you do not have to accept. Jake had read the briefings on Korean physiology. Dense muscle fibers designed for explosive movement. Subdermal plating beneath scales. Aggression bred into doctrine. Every advantage belonged to her. But the files had mentioned something else to almost an afterthought. A note on combat efficiency curves, endurance drop-offs. Training culture centered on overwhelming force and short engagements. Jake exhaled once, slow. Then he nodded. I accept. For an instant, Voroshek looked almost surprised, then pleased, as if she'd been handed exactly what she wanted. Excellent, she purred. Finally, a human with spirit. She circled him, studying him with predatory curiosity. Do you know what happened to my last challenger? A Gordanian, bred for combat. Her smile widened. I defeated him in 43 seconds. I heard 47, Jake replied. Silence sharpened. Her smile snapped away. Are you mocking me? Just being accurate, Jake said evenly. If we're going to fight, the records should be correct for a heartbeat. It looked like she might strike him right there among the diplomats and spilled glass. Then she threw her head back and laughed, loud enough to bounce off the dome. I like you, she said. I'll almost regret crushing you. She leaned close, voice low enough that only Jake and the nearest humans could hear. It won't last a minute. We'll see, Jake said. Voroshik swept away with her entourage like a storm leaving a room in its wake. Conversation slowly restarted, but it didn't return to normal. Everywhere Jake looked, people were talking with their hands, their eyes, their comms. Even the air felt charged, as if the station itself anticipated violence. Commander Grant pulled Jake aside. Do you understand what you've done? This isn't a training bout. It's theater, symbol. If you lose badly, it reflects on humanity, Jake finished. Grant's jaw clenched. Exactly. Jake watched the princess disappear through the hole's exit. Someone had to say yes, Commander. She wasn't going to stop until one of us did. Ambassador Chen arrived, face drawn. I can try to negotiate a cancellation. Medical restrictions, diplomatic sensitivity, anything. No, Jake said. If we back out now, we confirm her story. Sophie stared at him, disbelief fighting with worry. Jake, she's built like a tank. Jake's mouth curved just slightly. Then I won't fight her like a tank. He woke before dawn to the station's quiet hum and the distant rhythm of machinery. In an empty practice room, Jake sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, breathing measured. He wasn't praying. He wasn't panicking. He was doing what he'd learned to do when the odds were bad, preparing his mind to be useful. Recordings flickered behind his eyelids, Voroshik moving like a hurricane. Matches ending in brutal seconds. Opponents collapsing. Armor denting. Batons shattering barriers as if they were paper. Commander Grant entered silently. When Jake opened his eyes, she sat across from him and spoke without preamble. I watched her this morning, she said. She punched through reinforced steel as a warm-up. I know, Jake said. Grant's gaze searched him, frustration and fear intertwined. Then why are you still calm? Jake stood and rolled his shoulders, feeling the familiar looseness settle into his joints. Did you know humans used to hunt by chasing? Grant blinked. Chasing? We weren't the fastest, Jake said. We weren't the strongest, but we could keep going. 4 hours, for days, if we had to. We outlasted things that could kill us in a single blow. Because we learned how to survive long enough for the fight to change. Grant folded her arms. This isn't a marathon. It's a duel. Every duel becomes a marathon, Jake said, if you don't die early. He began moving slow, controlled drills, not the explosive power routines Koreans favored. Efficiency, footwork, balance, no wasted motion. I watched all 47 of her matches, Jake continued. The longest lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes against a Zenithary who outweighed her by 300 pounds, Grant said, grim. Jake nodded, and she was fresh the whole time because everyone fought her game. They tried to win with strength. They panicked. They fed her what she wanted, fear and collision. Grant's expression shifted, a hint of understanding emerging from the worry. So you'll run? I'll survive, Jake corrected. There's a difference. When Grant left, Jake kept training quiet, relentless, careful not to exhaust himself before the arena ever opened. Across the station, in the royal quarters assigned to Korean dignitaries, Princess Voroshek trained like a war machine. Her practice room looked like a disaster zone. Drones lay in pieces. Wall panels were cracked. The air stank faintly of ozone and hot metal. Harder, she commanded. General Thiex, her combat instructor, adjusted the drone settings with cautious hands. Your Highness, these settings are beyond military standards. The human accepted, Voroshek said, striking a drone so hard it folded against the far wall. I will not dishonor myself with half effort, Thiex bowed. Of course, though you won't need maximum force. Humans are delicate. Voroshek paused, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Tell me about him. Thiex consulted his device. Jake Morrison, 28, fought in the outer colonies during the Raider Wars. Commendations for tactical excellence. Survived 3 years in hostile territory with minimal resources. 3 years, Voroshek repeated. Not impressed, interested. That requires more than strength. A human's endurance means little against Korean power. Thiex said. Voroshek resumed her assault, the room shaking with each strike. Every opponent is a threat until defeated, she said. My father taught me that. By evening, betting houses were reporting record activity. The odds against Jake climbed absurdly 50-1. Humans placed bets anyway, not because it made sense, but because hope sometimes looked like stupidity from the outside. Sophie found Jake reviewing footage again, eyes tracking Voroshek's patterns. She set a meal tray down hard enough to jolt him out of his focus. Eat, she ordered. She has 3 main approaches, Jake said, as if continuing a conversation with himself. Aggressive rush, circular pressure, vertical dominance. Every match uses one of them because they work, Sophie said. Because she's unstoppable. They work because people panic, Jake replied. He took a bite without tasting it. Fear is her best weapon. Danny Wright arrived with a stack of data files. Pulled comparative endurance metrics, he said, spreading them across the table. Humans are top 15% in sustained exertion. Koreans are lower. How low? Jake asked. Danny hesitated, then pointed. Around the 40th percentile. Their muscles are built for short bursts. Ambush predator biology. They spike hard, then drop. Sophie stared. That helps if you live long enough for it to matter. That's the point, Jake said quietly. He tapped the armor schematics Danny had pulled. Her ceremonial armor weighs about 40 pounds. To her, it's nothing. For the first 10 minutes, Jake said. After that, it's a drag chain. Sophie watched him for a long moment. You're really doing this? Jake lifted his eyes. I'm not trying to be a hero. Then what are you doing? Making sure they know humans don't fold, he said. Win or lose. The next day, the grand arena filled like a living organism, thousands of spectators from dozens of worlds. Bodies packed into tiers that rose toward the station's inner curve. Floating cameras drifted overhead, broadcasting to billions beyond Zenith Prime. The platform itself was a circle 100 meters wide, textured with artificial terrain barriers, ridges, raised patches designed to prevent simple straight-line charges from ending fights too quickly. Jake walked out first. The roar hit him like pressure. Some spectators went quiet, surprised by how ordinary he looked. Others laughed openly. A small cluster of humans erupted into cheers, their voices sharp with defiance. Jake didn't look toward them, not because he didn't care, but because he couldn't afford to. He stepped into his starting position and activated the assigned energy baton. It hummed light, responsive, a weapon that would adjust to the strength of whoever held it. Voroshek's would hit harder. His would move faster. The opposite tunnel flashed with light. Princess Voroshek emerged to thunder. Her armor gleamed purple and gold, a moving monument. She raised her arms and drank in the applause like oxygen. When her gaze locked on Jake, it held amusement like a cat watching a mouse stand upright. "You actually came," she called. Jake simply lifted his baton and settled into a relaxed stance, knees bent, weight balanced, breathing steady. Before the official began, Voroshek lifted her voice again. "One last offer, human. Yield now. Spare yourself humiliation. Tell the galaxy you were wise enough to recognize superiority." "No thanks," Jake replied. Her laugh was bright and cruel. "Then your defeat will be entertainment." A neutral Vexari coordinator floated forward, voice amplified through translation. Combatants acknowledged the rules. No lethal weapons beyond the provided batons. Victory by submission, incapacitation, or surrender. No strikes after submission. Medical intervention at any moment. "Do you understand?" "Yes," Voroshek said. "Understood," Jake said. They stood 15 meters apart. "Begin." Voroshek launched like a missile, crossing the distance in seconds. The ground cracked under her feet. Her baton lifted overhead, aimed to end the match with one brutal downstroke. Jake waited until the last possible moment, then dove sideways. Her baton slammed into the platform. The impact carved a crater into reinforced metal, sending fragments spinning. The crowd gasped. Jake rolled, sprang up, moved again, never in a straight line, never wasting a step. Voroshek spun and swung horizontally, a sweeping strike meant to catch him mid-motion. Jake ducked, feeling the weapon's passage stir the air above his head. "Stand still," Voroshek roared. Jake didn't answer. He kept moving, not fleeing blindly, but guiding the chase toward obstacles, barriers that forced her to adjust. Ridges that broke her angles, rises that stole the clean momentum of her charges. Every strike she threw could have ended him. Every strike missed. A barrier exploded under her baton. A ridge shattered. The arena floor gathered scars, as if documenting her frustration. Minutes passed. 2, 3. The crowd's confidence began to wobble. This was supposed to be fast, clean, a demonstration of hierarchy. At 5 minutes, Voroshek's breath sounded heavier. Not exhausted, she was still terrifying, but no longer effortless. "Coward," she spat. "Face me." "I am facing you," Jake said, and kept circling. 8 minutes in, her swings grew wider, less precise. Fury was leaking into technique, and technique was what had made her undefeated. Jake watched her feet, her shoulders, the way her armor shifted, the fraction of delay after each explosive burst. There, Voroshek overextended on a heavy strike, and Jake didn't try to match her strength. He darted in and snapped his baton against the inside of her extended arm. At the vulnerable gap where armor plates met near the elbow joint, Voroshek grunted an involuntary sound of pain and jerked back. The crowd reacted like they'd witnessed a miracle. Jake stepped away immediately, not lingering, not celebrating. "First mark," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. Shock flickered across Voroshek's face, then rage. "You're better than I thought." "I'm still learning," Jake replied. She laughed, but the sound was thinner now. "Learning? What could you learn that matters?" Jake didn't explain. He didn't have the breath to waste. He simply resumed the dance. 10 minutes, 11. The arena fell into a strange silence, the kind that happens when a room full of people realizes they might be wrong. At 12 minutes, Voroshek stood bent slightly at the waist, chest heaving. Sweat slicked her scales. Her magnificent armor looked dull now, heavy with heat and effort. Jake's muscles burned, and his lungs worked harder, but his breathing stayed controlled. He'd lived through worse than fatigue. He'd lived through starvation, through raids, through nights when survival was a thin thread and you kept moving because stopping meant dying. He had reached the moment he'd planned for, the moment the fight changed. "You're slowing," Jake observed. Voroshek straightened through sheer pride. "I have strength enough to crush you." "Maybe," Jake said, and advanced for the first time, not charging, just stepping in with deliberate calm. Voroshek lifted her baton defensively, surprised. Jake feinted left. She reacted instantly, swinging to intercept. He was already moving right. His baton snapped against the side of her armored knee with precise force. The joint buckled slightly. Voroshek staggered. The crowd detonated into noise. "How?" Voroshek demanded, breath ragged. "You should be broken by now." Jake didn't give a lecture on human evolution or persistence hunting. He just struck again, targeting structure, not power. Another knee, another joint, another seam where armor met flexibility. Voroshek lunged, using reach, trying to overwhelm him one last time with raw violence. Jake stepped inside her range, too close for her long weapon to be ideal. He hit fast, 2 sharp strikes at connecting points on her armor. Voroshek roared and swung wide with her free hand, trying to physically knock him away. Jake dropped low, rolled, came up behind her. His baton smacked the back of her knee hard enough to force her down to one knee. "Virina!" erupted. The human section screamed his name like it was a prayer. Voroshek pushed herself upright, movements slower now. Her eyes held something new. Fear. "This isn't possible," she rasped. "I'm stronger, faster." "You're tired," Jake said, voice steady even as his body begged for rest. "You trained for quick endings." "I trained to survive." Voroshek charged again, desperate, and in desperation her timing showed gaps. Jake sidestepped and struck her weapon arm as she passed. The baton flew from her grip and skittered across the platform. Weaponless, she lunged with clawed hands, trying to grab him. One solid grip would end the match. Jake danced back and kept striking carefully, relentlessly wearing her down, never giving her the clean contact she needed. 15 minutes. A record for her, an eternity for her body. Yield, Jake said, not taunting offering. You fought well. There's no shame. Never, Voroshek snarled, pride clinging like armor. She swung wildly. Jake ducked and swept her legs. She fell hard. Her heavy armor slammed the platform with a crash that echoed through the dome. She tried to rise. Jake was already there. Baton pressed against her throat, firm enough to make the point, gentle enough to leave room for dignity. Yield, he repeated. Voroshek stared up at him. In his eyes she didn't find cruelty. She found respect. Something in her expression broke quietly, painfully, and she closed her eyes. I yield, she said. For 3 heartbeats the arena held its breath. Then chaos. Half the crowd screamed celebration. Half screamed disbelief. Betting systems lit up. Cameras zoomed like predators chasing history. Jake stepped back and offered Voroshek his hand. She looked at it a long moment, then took it. He pulled, and she rose towering even in defeat, but no longer unshakable. You fought well, Jake said. You fought better, Voroshek admitted, the words clearly costing her. I underestimated your species. I underestimated you. The Vexari coordinator floated forward, voice amplified. Match concluded. Victory to the human combatant, Jake Morrison. Humans rushed the platform. Sophie reached Jake first, grabbing his arm as the adrenaline drained and the exhaustion crashed down like a wave. Danny punched the air. Commander Grant's expression softened into relief and pride. The Korean delegation approached cautiously, faces rigid with shock. General Thiex looked devastated. Your Highness, this is unprecedented. You have never. Voroshek cut him off. Say it plainly, General. He swallowed. You lost. Voroshek nodded once. Yes, I did. She turned toward Jake, now surrounded by medical drones scanning his bruises and strained muscles. He won fairly, she said, voice carrying. Through preparation and tactics. Ambassador Chen stepped forward carefully. Princess Voroshek, this changes nothing between our peoples. We still seek cooperation. Voroshek's gaze remained on Jake. It changes everything, she said. For my victories, I believed might was absolute. Today I learned strength without wisdom is incomplete. A message chimed on Thiex's device. He listened, and the color beneath his scales seemed to drain. Your Highness, the Emperor requests immediate contact. Voroshek straightened. Tell my father I will speak soon. Then she walked toward Jake. You said you trained to fight as long as necessary, she said. How long were you prepared to continue? Jake managed a tired smile. As long as it took. Hours if needed. Longer if possible. Voroshek's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in thought. My people evolved as ambush predators. Quick kills. Your kind. Evolved differently. We evolved to outlast, Jake said. To keep going when others stopped. To adapt when the rules changed. Voroshek nodded slowly, as if reassembling her worldview piece by piece. Hours later, in a medical recovery room, Jake lay wrapped in regenerative bandages, that hummed softly against his skin. Every muscle complained. Sophie sat beside him, refusing to leave. Danny scrolled through messages. They're calling you the Giant Slayer. Also Endurance Warrior. Oh, here's one. The Human War. I'd prefer none of those, Jake muttered. Too late, Sophie said, grinning. Commander Grant entered with a data pad, serious despite the triumph in her eyes. Jake, you need to see this. She activated a hologram. A massive Korean figure appeared larger than Voroshik, armor marked with imperial symbols. His presence alone seemed to compress the room. Emperor Knax. To the human known as Jake Morrison, the recording began. I watched the match between you and my daughter. In 400 years, I have witnessed countless battles. Today I witnessed something new. His voice carried the gravity of an empire. You defeated her not by strength, but by strategy. You transformed her advantages into burdens. You demonstrated that power alone does not define worth. The Emperor paused, eyes like burning coin. I request that humanity send military advisors to the Korean Empire. We wish to learn your methods of endurance, adaptation, and tactical thinking. In exchange, we offer alliance status and access to Korean resources. The hologram vanished. Jake stared at the space it left behind. He wants us to teach them how to fight like humans, he said slowly. He wants to make his warriors better, Sophie corrected. Danny grinned. And he's willing to pay for it. Before Jake could respond, the door opened again. Princess Voroshik stepped in no armor now, just royal garments. Her movements stiff from strain and bruises. She looked less like a myth and more like a person who had lost something and was trying to decide. What came next? May I speak with you privately? She asked. Grant and Danny exchanged glances, then left. Sophie lingered a heartbeat, then followed, closing the door behind her. Voroshik sat carefully across from Jake's bed. For a moment she said nothing, as if choosing words was a new kind of combat. I spoke with my father, she began. He was not angry. He was excited. He sees opportunity where I saw humiliation. You fought with honor, Jake said. There's no humiliation in that. In my culture, Voroshik said quietly, there was. Or I believed there was. She looked down at her hands that had broken champions. I trained my entire life to be feared. I never considered that other qualities mattered as much. They do, Jake said. Strength matters, but it isn't everything. Voroshik leaned forward. You knew you could not match my power, so you did not try. You observed. You adapted. You exploited my weaknesses. Jake nodded once. How did you learn that? She asked. Jake let the memory surface harsh worlds, empty supply lines, nights of cold rationing, days of being hunted. The outer colonies, he said. My unit was cut off for 3 years, outnumbered, outgunned. We lived by being smarter, by lasting longer, by refusing to stop. Tell me, Voroshik said. So Jake did. He told her about ambushes that required patience rather than courage, defensive holds that succeeded because no one quit, raids that depended on timing and restraint. He spoke of loss without melodrama. He spoke of survival without romance. Voroshik listened with a focus that felt like reverence. Her questions precise, her mind clearly built for more than brute force. When he finished, she sat back, breathing slow. "Your species earned survival," she said finally. "You were not given advantages. You created them. We did what we had to," Jake said. Voroshek rose, towering even without armor. But her presence felt different now, less contempt. More curiosity. "I want to learn from you," she said. "Not only tactics. The mindset." Jake's lips curved faintly. "You'll have to talk to Commander Grant about official arrangements." "I will," Voroshek said. She moved toward the door, then paused. "Thank you, Jake Morrison." "For what?" "For offering dignity when you could have taken it away," she said. "That is also strength." Then she left. The next day, cleared for light duty, Jake met Ambassador Chen on the observation deck. Beyond the viewport, stars drifted in silent rivers. The station's reflection hovered ghost-like over the glass. "The Coalition Council met this morning," Chen said. He looked exhausted and satisfied. "Your victory changed everything. 18 species that ignored our trade proposals now request meetings. Military exchanges, technology shares. Even a Security Council seat is on the table." Jake stared. "Because I won a fight. Because you made a statement," Chen corrected. "You proved humanity cannot be dismissed. You showed them we compete in ways they didn't anticipate." Chen's expression softened. "Princess Voroshek released a public address this morning. She acknowledged her arrogance. She praised human doctrine. She told the galaxy it would be foolish to underestimate us." Jake blinked. "She's defending us. She respects strength," Chen said. "And you showed her kind she hadn't recognized." Over the following weeks, Zenith Prime transformed. The human delegation swelled as specialists arrived to handle the sudden flood of interest. Diplomats ran on caffeine and adrenaline. Negotiation rooms stayed lit through artificial night. And Princess Voroshek began training with human instructors. At first, it went badly. Korean instincts screamed at patience. Her body wanted to end exchanges quickly, to dominate with force. She struggled with conservation of energy and the idea that retreat could be strategy instead of shame. But she persisted. She asked relentless questions. She repeated drills until sweat ran down her scales. She learned to see terrain as a tool, timing as a weapon, endurance as an equalizer. Human Marines who had once looked at her with fear began to look at her with respect. One evening, Jake still healing, found her alone in a training room. She was practicing the same evasive footwork he'd used in the arena, moving around obstacles with deliberate control. She stopped when she noticed him, breathing hard. Then she smiled, an expression that looked less like a threat and more like a genuine attempt. "You're improving," Jake said. "I am trying," Voroshek replied, rolling her shoulders. "I'm learning to fight like a human. Or at least I'm learning what that means." Jake leaned against the doorway, watching her reset her stance with a new kind of patience. "It's not about fighting like a human," he said. "It's about understanding why humans fight the way we do." Voroshek nodded slowly. "To survive long enough for the world to change." Jake's tired smile returned. "Exactly. Under the station's artificial starlight, the undefeated princess now defeated. Now learning stepped back into motion. And for the first time since Jake had met her, the future felt less like a collision and more like a conversation.